does he do? He might go all the way. He gives it a ride. It's a chance. It'll be a goal. Easy money. Wants to roll the floor. He can. Come at the moment. Come at the champion.
It wasn't pretty, but we got the result that mattered. Longmire wasn't happy and neither were the fans. Intensity was found wanting at times throughout the match, but a 5-goal burst in the third quarter got the job done. This is the Swans Blog's SwansCast, the number one Sydney Swans fans podcast.
Just our hitting out intensity was up and down a little bit during the course of the game. You really noticed it when we were really having a go, and then we just relaxed a little bit with that. And it was probably a little bit of polish at times. We kicked 5 goals 10 on turnover, for instance, and you flip that around and you're pretty efficient with the ball, but we were probably a bit above.
In this week's episode, we will review the Swans' intriguing 30-point win against Carlton on Friday night. We'll give you our Monday champions and villains, discuss a couple of the players, give a quick wrap of the Swans NEAFL result, and have Josh answer questions in our 3-minute scramble. I'm Justin Mitchell, and with me is SwansCast first-timer Josh Maher. It wasn't a great game, was it, Josh?
No, it wasn't. Oh, it was interesting. It was a little microcosm of our season as a whole, I think, in 4 quarters of weird football.
Yeah, completely agree. We had basically a 10-minute burst or 15-minute burst in the second and third quarters that really looked like it was about to blow the game open, but then for maybe about 80 minutes of the match, the Swans just weren't at the races at all.
No, they weren't. And I don't know whether we seem to be a little bit complacent at home. It doesn't seem to be a mindset we carry when we go away. But at the SCG, we seem to be a little bit complacent at the start of matches, and it seems to catch us off guard a little bit.
Yeah, completely agree. Obviously, the first halves against North Melbourne and Adelaide, the first quarter in particular against Adelaide, we were very, very poor. They pretty much got the march on us and we couldn't really overtake them in the end. Carlton, I mean, they weren't fantastic, but we were kind of doing our best to make players like Jack Silvani just look absolutely fantastic. And I still have scarred memory of Ed Kernow just walking out of the middle with a ball in hand and no Swans near him for 15 metres.
Yeah, Ed Kernow looked like an absolute rock star in that 15 seconds, didn't he?
He did, and it was pretty amazing. Like, you're looking at the centre clearance and you're like, where on earth are the Swans players? Like, Luke Parker was the closest one, and he was already 15 metres away from him.
Yeah, and I think John Longmire really covered that off in his presser. He mentioned that they had some structural issues and some communication issues going on in the middle. They talked about it at the back of the third quarter, and then they straightened it up after that. But for about 15 minutes of the third quarter, it looked really ugly in the middle.
Yeah, it really did. And look, just a little bit of something from John's press conference. He said, we felt in the first 10 minutes of the third we were getting beaten around a ball, and then we turned that around in the last 10 minutes of the third, and the players noticed it at 3/4 time and spoke about it. The last 10 was important for us, hitting our intensity. And there was a little bit more later on in the press conference where he said, with regards to moving the ball forward smartly, he said Carlton's pressure was pretty good and we didn't use it as well as we could at different times. When we did use it, we were able to get uncontested marks and make it easier for us. He's not wrong. We weren't good with the ball, and our intensity was just way off from the get-go.
Yeah, and with the ball movement in particular, it's been a bugbear of lots of fans for a couple of years now. Constant bombing inside forward 50. There was one bit of play there where Ollie Florent just hit Isaac Heaney on the lead, and I thought, there it is. That we need that. And I think, with the exception of Maher doing it one other time, I can't really remember any standout point where we just hit a short target inside 50. There was a lot of hitting to, kicking along to pack marks.
Yeah.
And without, the reads there to take the big overhead grab, I just can't see how it's going to work for us against some of the teams we've got coming up over the next, 8 weeks.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you look at players like Kieran Jack, who over the journey have been that key ball mover inside 50. Jarek McVeigh, he's played high up the ground. He actually spent quite a lot of time in 2016 and 2017 playing half-forward flank, and he was one of the main reasons why we got a lot of easy goals inside 50, but it's because he's basically the best field kick in the team. Hanbury, he's been pretty much, I guess you could say, out of form now since the 2016 grand final, since he had his knee bent backwards and he still managed to get back on the ground, but ever since then, he's just really struggled.
Yeah, he has. He's been a little bit like a Lear, actually. I think he's been hit by the injury stick hard. His osteitis pubis, the PCL injury, the groin, those sort of things. He's missed both pre-seasons, the calf early this year. He just needs an uninjured run. I think he looked like he worked hard both ways last night, which was really good to see. I'm a huge Hanbury fan. He's my favourite player.
The only problem I find is that he's just not getting his hands anywhere near the ball. It could be a new role. A lot has changed in the last couple of years with regards to the Swans, and I was kind of thinking about this actually while I was just walking the dogs before, about the difference between Longmire when he first came on and the Swans as they played then and the Swans as they play now. So you reflect back to 2011, 2012, it was very much a very heavily congested, contested side. They were racking up average, I think, about 75, 80 tackles a game. Basically 18 players behind the ball, and they just had Reid, who'd actually come all the way up to almost centre-half back in Jeddah on the outside, and they just get the ball to Jeddah.
Yep.
And in the 2012 year, he kicked, I think, almost 50 goals, and I reckon about 90% of those were kicks over the top.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. The seeds of change are there. We're starting to see it. We need more Ollie Florence, though, to get there, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely I think there's a bit of a divide between the quality and ball users in our senior and our young brigade. Usually premiership contending teams have that middle tier, the 23 to 27 group, who can really use the ball well. I think at the moment we're struggling with that, with players who can move the ball inside 50. Players are out of form, they're injured, they've been moved on and traded, or they've just got old, and they're no longer as effective as they used to be. And Kieran Jack is pretty much point in case in that, and Hanbury is struggling as well. Look, Parker's never been a particularly good inside 50 ball user, but he's always been a good goal kicker.
Yep.
So, look, this is basically the top of the agenda. The Swans, they scrap past Carlton when they've managed the squad. You look at players like Papley, who's pretty much hasn't trained. Longmire said hasn't trained for 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, I was interested when he said that. He didn't look like he's been struggling that much when he played. Like, he's not kicking as many goals as he was last year, but he is in a bit of a different role at the moment. So it was a surprise to hear he hadn't trained for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And he said he wants to get him back into the midfield. I suppose when you've got Ronk in the forward line, Hayward in the forward line as well, and Oliver, who can go a bit forward, who's playing more wing at the moment, you have that luxury where you can actually have those smaller types go into the midfield and do a lot of tackling and running and tagging. Yep. I suppose that would free Kieran Jack to almost go back into the forward flank.
Yeah, yep.
So it's interesting how the squad is evolving at the moment. I would say this is probably the third distinct change of gameplay under John Longmire's time. I think he is evolving with the times itself. I don't agree that with some of the assertions made earlier this year that the Swans are moving towards a Richmond style of play.
No, and I don't think you want to either. I think if everybody is doing exactly what Richmond is doing, then everyone is working on how to beat it as well. So you need something a little bit different, so they're not concentrating on that style of play all the time, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think they are. Basically, a lot of people compared. We're talking about reporters, journalists, pundits, and commentators compared the Swans with their small forward line with Richmond's small forward line and a single ruck. That wasn't by design. Basically, Sydney's backup ruck hadn't even played a game yet, and he's only 21, 22. And to be honest, he's still just like NEAFL quality. He's not. I don't think he's quite ready yet. Our forward line was down to bare bones. We were literally debuting people and playing kids, because that's all we had. Rose was basically a next on a chopping block, and he can't even get a look in on the senior team. If they had Brendan Jack would have played.
Yeah, he would have.
So that's like...
but if we had brought Brandon Jack in... I was a huge Brandon Jack fan last year. I just wanted him in there. But every time we brought him in, he played as a stellar sort of inside midfielder in the NEAFL, and then we'd bring him in and play him down in a forward pocket or something, and he'd spud it up every time he'd go straight back out of the senior team. So I don't know... If they're doing good in NEAFL, you've got to bring them into a position they're going to excel in seniors as well. And it didn't really work for Brandon. So I don't know whether you get that same transition straight out of our reserves into our senior team at the moment.
Well, look, that transitions us into our next segment. We're actually not doing the Monday Moment of Madness. There really isn't much yet because it's not Monday, it's Sunday afternoon. So we're actually going to change it up this week and we're doing a player review. So, Josh, I'm going to give you 4 players and I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The players are Riley Stoddart, Nick Newman, Gary Rowan, and Alir.
Okay.
And the questions are going to be, where are they now? What do they have to do to break into the senior team or keep their spot? And what's their future beyond this year? So the first one, Riley Stoddard, he's only 18 years old. Where do you think he's at now?
I think he's exactly where they want him to be, actually. I think they've brought him in. They've given him a taste of senior footy. I think he'll probably go out in the next couple of weeks, and that'll be part of his development. I say, go and work on these things, but you're on our radar. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yep, no, I think he's very much like Oliver Florent from last season. There was the quality, you could see it was there. It was in the NEAFL, it was in the JLT. You could just see it was there, but physically he just wasn't up to it.
Yeah, he looks like a boy among men, and he looks like he needs a big year in the gym.
Definitely.
I think you're right about the comparison with Florent from last year. And as for Stoddard's future, he's just been re-signed for another 2 years or 1 year or something, so he's going to be around for a little while.
Now, do you think he'll be playing seniors next year, or do you think he'll spend basically the next year and a half in the reserves with a couple of games here and there?
That's going to depend on what happens on the trade table at the end of this year. I think we need to turn some people over, and I don't know who that's going to be.
Yeah, agree. And we also have Ling as well. So Matthew Ling, he's been killing it in the reserves. I guess people would see Stoddard and Ling potentially come into the team, and they see them play. They're like, oh, they're only kids. What are they doing playing? Well, it's not as if they haven't unwarranted their selection. They've actually been basically top 4, top 5 every week in the NEAFL. Yep. And you kind of look at it like people, I suppose they look at Mills and Heaney and they go, oh, they were so good. They came in, had an immediate impact. But they were through their academy system for 6 years. The Swans knew exactly what they were getting with them. And they were literally senior ready when they played. If they'd gone to any other club, they would have played first week guaranteed, and they would have played the entire season like both of them did.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Now, Nick Newman. Where is he now?
He comes up a lot at the moment, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
I don't know with Nick Newman. He's really hard to get a read on at the moment. I was very happy to see him back in the team this week. He looked a little bit starstruck for the first probably half, I guess. Probably realised he was his big chance, and he needed to cement his spot and probably made a few mistakes there, but I thought he was reasonably good by the end of the game. What does he have to do to keep his spot? He just needs to keep doing what he's doing at the moment.
Look, I would agree. He has to, I suppose, his disposal at the moment is a concern. He was turning it over quite a lot in the first half, and it is pretty much a track record with him is that his disposal can let him down, and it can let him down quite a bit as well. Especially when he played earlier this year and he got dropped twice. He's basically getting dropped on the back of his absolutely horrid disposal, which was even worse in Kieran Jack's. Yep. And Kieran Jack's disposal hasn't been good for a while.
You have to wonder what's actually changing there as well. He's not a young player. Like he's almost the same age as Dan Hannabury. He's 26. Is that right?
Yeah, he's turning 26 this year if he hasn't turned 26 already.
So
and that's the one thing that isn't on his side either.
No, he's at that crossroads. I just wonder whether it's a bit of do I stay and battle for a spot with this club, or do I go somewhere else closer to home? Get some more guaranteed senior time. So I think Nick Newman's whatever's going on there is largely just like a mental game at the moment. I'd love to see him stay. I really would. I think he's got a lot of good stuff going on. So I'm going to say he's going to stay next year. Having said that, if he wanted to go, if he said I love the Swans, but I want to go back to Victoria, this is the year that you would. This is the year where that would be okay, because it's an incredibly strong draft coming up, and I think he'd be worth a second round. Coupled with that, we need points. We've got Nick Blakey and stuff on the radar.
Agreed.
Yeah, so 50-50 is either go or he's going to stay, but personally I'd love him to stay. He just needs to get some of his confidence back.
Look, he's kind of a victim of circumstances, really. Yep. We'll move on to Gary Owen in a second, but when he came in, McVeigh was out of the side, and he looked like a bit of a revelation coming off the back flank.
He did.
Since McVeigh returned, Kieran Jack returned, he's basically just been shuffled around, and he's playing wherever they can fit him in, which is almost on the forward flank, and he's not very good in the forward line. He's not very good on the wing. He's really just a decent back flanker, like he's a workman-like defender. So if Jared McVeigh had retired 2 years ago, which was looking quite likely after the 2016 Grand Final, I think he would be fine, but now he's basically got Stoddard and Ling breathing down his neck. I personally don't think he'll actually be here next year. I think the Swans will trade him. Now, Gary Rowan, where do you think he's at now?
Gary Rowan. Look, you got to preface everything with Gary Rowan. I'm not a Gary Rowan hater. I am an absolute Gary Rowan fan. I love everything about the Gary Rowan story. The way he was challenged with some horrific injuries, and I'm not just talking about the leg. He had his first hamstring injury was almost career-ending in itself, let alone the fractured leg, and then to do another hamstring. The back injuries. He had a couple of pretty serious head knocks at one stage as well. And then,
last year.
And then put the whole family tragedy on top of that. He's a hell of a story. And other than that, he just seems like he's a hell of a nice guy to be around. His teammates speak glowingly of him. Where's he? I think Gary's about. Gary, the last couple of weeks, he's about where he always is. I thought he was really good in the Hawthorn game. And I think this week, I think for the first half he was pretty good, and then he sort of flaked out a little bit after that. It is true he is a low possession player, and I have absolutely no qualms with that. I'd like to see him do a little bit more tackling though, and I think that may be part of what Tom Harley was talking about last week.
Yeah,
when they said he'd been dropped. He just needed to find the ball a little bit more. It's interesting they're rucking him a little bit at the moment. I think they've gone, well, if we're going to have this guy around and we're going to have this pace, we're going to have this guy who can potentially break lines, we need to find a little bit more space for him to do other things. So I was quite happy to see him do a couple of rucks. I was surprised at his vertical leap as well, actually.
Yeah, but even then, he almost got chased down by Cruiser. And that was in the third quarter. He had to give him a push off to break away from him. And I was just like, oh, God, is he even running?
Yeah, I think he was shocked when Cruiser was there. I don't think he had his jets on. So he must have. I'm glad he turned around and realised Cruiser was there. But he pushed him off and got his jets on and then kicked the ball. I think he was shocked to find there was someone behind him.
Yeah, look, do you think he'll be with the club this year, or do you think he'll be in the seniors?
No, I think he will. I think he will. If he's still the fastest man on our team by a long way, though Ronk probably gives him a little bit of a run for his money. Whether he's in seniors, well, I think that'll totally depend on how our NEAFL guys develop further. One thing I will say about him, and I think we may have spoken about this once before, is that I think Gary's he's a clubman. He's probably one of those guys like AJ who's just this really great personality who's just fantastic to have around the locker room, and there's huge value in that. They used to say the same thing about Ivan Maric from Tigerlands, that even how he wasn't playing senior games at all, and the fans were like, delisting. Apparently he was just brilliant to be around off the football field, and that was where his value really was. So I think Gary's probably one of those as well.
All right, now quickly on to the last one, and then we'll move on to our champions and villains and a bit more on the match. Aaliyah, where do you think he is now, and what do you think he has to do to get into the seniors? And do you think he has a future beyond this year, because he is out of contract this year?
Yeah, I'll start from the bottom. I'll say, he's got a future beyond this year. I think he's a unique talent, and I think we need to keep him. And you've only got to look at that body of work he did in 2016 to know that is a guy that you absolutely need to have around. Where is he? Look, he everyone wants Aaliyah back in. He's a bit like Hanbury the last 2 years. He's been hit by the injury stick since he had that knee injury against Geelong in 2016. And from that point on, he just went from, knee injury, foot injury, I think another knee injury after that, had a run of bad form. Something happened earlier this year and he got injured again. But for the last 5 weeks or so, he looks like he's got his agility back. And probably the last 2 weeks, he looks like he's got a little bit of form back. And even Wayne Carey mentioned that during the commentary of the game last night, that they'd seen the Sydney Reserves team play before the seniors went out there, and he said, he's got his form back. So I like where he is at the moment. He just needs to keep doing what he's doing, and I think he'll probably push Marsh out sometime in the next 2 to 5 weeks. I think he'd be a serious contender to come back into the senior team.
Yeah, we'll chat about that a little bit later on in the show, but now we're going to move on to our Monday champions. So, Josh, have you got a Monday champion? Well, actually, we should preface this with, it's actually a Sunday champion.
Oh, yeah, Sunday champions. I like the sound of that. My Sunday champion is the sound guy from the SCG boy. When they played the Swans song halfway through the first quarter, I laughed at that. I thought that was great, and a little bit of villain in my head hopes he did that on purpose.
Now, mine is, I've given him a bit of a nickname here. Dean Cox kind of turning into a bit of a clone here. Callum, the Oven Mitts Sinclair. He has been fantastic this year. He's marking and clunking like pretty much like the best of them. Some of his stats. I had a look before the show last week on the Thursday preview show. His stats are basically elite for a number of ruckman categories where he's right up there amongst the best.
Really?
And his game against Cruiser was another starring show. He was arguably the best on ground. Should have been awarded the medal, to be honest. But Heaney only played really 2 good quarters, and he was pretty much invisible for 2 more quarters.
Yep. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I had a laugh that the medal went to the hot blonde kid, and not the big lumbering ruckman. But I've been absolutely enthralled and impressed with the epic improvement in Sinclair this year, and he's just a great player to watch at the moment.
Now, for your not Monday but Sunday villain.
Oh, Gary Ablett.
Yeah,
Gary Ablett. I followed a little bit of the Gold Coast Sun stuff over the years, and I was in Queensland when a number of big stories up there broke. And of course, being a rugby state, they're all about putting down the AFL whenever they can on sports media up there. For his last season to withdraw from games when he'd been declared fit to play and not travel interstate, some wavering form, and then the whole trade me or I'll resign. Blackmail, I guess, that he played with that club, for him to go up there and have what was a pretty good game. It just must have been a dagger through the hearts of all those Suns fans who wanted him out of there.
100% agree.
So absolute villainy.
Oh, yeah, look, I've talked about him before on the show. I've already said my piece, and look, I think as a footballer, I think he still has the respect as his best is still very good, but I think his shenanigans up with the Gold Coast and Geelongs, I think he's lost respect across the industry as the player he is and the person he is. So look, that's my piece on that. I do have a Sunday villain, and mine is actually Essendon again, I think for the 3rd time this year. They were dreadful, utterly dreadful in what should have been a showpiece match of the weekend, if not the showpiece match of the weekend. They were disgraceful, in my opinion. They played pretty good footy for about 15-20 minutes in the second quarter, and they got the match back to within. They had a chance to get it back under 2 goals.
Yeah. When Jake Stringer sprayed a shot that he should have hit, and I thought, well, that's just Stringer, and then it was just all downhill from there.
30 seconds later, I said, because me and Mrs. Blogs were at the match, I'm like, all right, I'm going down the stairs, get a Coke and some chips, and she's like, all right, just watch the match. I'm like, literally 2 steps down, and the ball just goes flying back up the other end. 20 seconds later, Richmond got a goal, and they just kick, I think, another 2 after
And then there
that.
was a bit of free kick Dustin Martin for a hold, which wasn't there, and then they just went to water.
They just went bang, 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 and that was it. In the 3rd quarter, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is getting ugly. 50 points. It might be 60 points. Okay, it might be 70 points at last quarter time. Yeah, look, they were a shambles. Yep. They were disgraceful in my opinion. They're kind of like Carlton, to be honest. I was originally going to do Monday Madness, or my moment of Monday Madness, which would actually be a Sunday segment based on Carlton's plethora of Friday night games. But yeah, look, Essendon were absolutely shambolic. Yep.
Agree.
Now, we did have some questions for our listeners for today's show. Our question was, is it time to give Aaliyah a run in the seniors, or is he just a NEAFL specialist? So we did have a couple of responses from our listeners about this. Interesting name from Facebook, Rex and Sue Mapley. She said, totally unfair, must be given at least 6 games in a row, a huge talent. Ross Boyle from Facebook said, we need another tall defender, if not him, someone else. Jason Langman from Facebook has said, would like to see him play, but in front of, I'm not sure. Tom Scott from Facebook said, Marsh is performing great and has earned his spot in the seniors, while Aaliyah has performed great. He has to wait for the spot to open up. Marsh more deserving right now. Amy Kiernan from Facebook said, he needs to be consistently good before he gets run in the seniors. And Ali Daly said, I don't rate him at all.
Fair enough.
Dagger through the heart. Sorry, Elia. Now, let's kick on to our weekend review. So we actually chat a bit about the match before in the preamble, before we even got into our top of the agenda. But some stats from the weekend, and this is pretty much like just completely echoes what you said earlier about the fact that we should have absolutely won, dominated by a very big margin. 26 scoring shots to 16, and we only won by 30 points. 5 goals to zip in the third quarter. That was literally the difference. I think we only won 2 quarters in the match, which was basically the first and the third. Not quite sure if we won the fourth, but we definitely won 2 quarters.
And that quarter could have gone, sort of 5 goals to 3 or 4 if they had a kick straight as well.
Yes.
So they let us off the hook, I think.
Yeah, agree. And our intensity just was not there for long enough. And if they had actually converted a couple goals, that match could have been really, really tight at the end, and it would have been another 1-2 goal margin, which I think would have been almost as bad as a loss for the Swans.
Yep.
Now, Swans had 43 more possessions, but they were all uncontested because they lost the contested possession count. The Swans had 62 inside 50s to 41 and only managed to kick, I think it was 16 goals. So they actually kicked 5 goals, 10 from turnovers, and Longmire lamented that in his press conference after the match. It was pretty shambolic.
Yeah, normally we'd be looking at sort of 10 goals, 5 or, 9 goals, 6 or something. So that's not a pattern at the moment, so it's not something I'm personally worried about. I am worried about the amount of inside 50s for so little return, though, is a bit interesting.
Yeah, we kept on going to Franklin, and that first quarter in particular, we kept on hitting Liam Jones pretty much on his own and a yard of space. We were making him and Jack Silvani look like absolutely legends of the game.
Yeah, that's true. There was a lot of talk about how great Liam Jones's intercept marking was, but he wasn't really positioning himself to intercept the ball. We just kicked it to the wrong person. He'd be 10 metres away from the target. We'd kick it to Liam Jones, and Duck would be, Liam Jones intercept marking again. Well, no, we just kicked it to the wrong guy.
He kicked it straight to him, yeah. Look, another thing that really surprised me was the fact that we actually lost clearances, and that's something the Swans really pride themselves on, to go with the contested possessions, which was really disappointing. But for the first time in a long time, the Swans actually won the tackle count.
Excellent.
61 to 49.
Which means we also, I think that's only the second time this year we've had more tackles than turnovers as well.
Yeah, which is pretty bad, actually. The fact that we're a bit of a turnover machine is a bit shambolic, because when we actually put it all together, when we get it right, we just blow teams off the park.
I know.
No team can keep up.
It feels like we need that little bit of pressure, as in, like, you have to win this game. We looked magnificent in the back end of last year. So I think we actually need a little bit of perceived pressure to get the best out of some of our guys at the moment.
Yeah, I think maybe a few players are cruising. A lot of players are playing injured, though. Hanbury, clearly. Franklin, clearly. Papley, he is. You could even argue that Kieran Jack is still sort of being managed because his disposal is getting a little bit better, but he's still quite off. Parker, Kennedy look like they're still not quite there. So it's really interesting. The good thing is all the lesser lights or the younger players, if you like, they've all stepped up. And they're all filling the gap, which is really important for the Swans.
And that's the really exciting thing at the moment. Ollie Florent, you can't sing that kid's praises enough at the moment. He is just going to be an absolute machine.
His last month has been really good, and Longmire also pointed out in the press conference that his last 2 games have been absolutely superb.
We were really happy with Florent's game, for instance, tonight. I thought he was really good. He's been good for a fair period of time, so... those younger kids are playing key roles for us, and sometimes when our structure wavers a little bit, that might happen a little bit as well. But they've still been playing pretty well. Yeah, he and Will and a couple of the other kids have been pretty good, and they need to be, because they're playing really important roles. They're not just coming in and playing bit parts to our team now. They're playing key roles for us and taking some of the load off our senior midfielders. And Ollie's run and carry has been important for us.
He had 13 disposals in the second half, career best, just on that game. And I reckon at least 70% of those were influential. Really proved the difference in the third and fourth quarter.
And he's really efficient with it too. Like, I think he 92%. I've got this vague recollection that he was up in the 90s last night. He does a lot of pressure acts, and he tackles hard, and he's exactly what we want. We need more Ollie Florence. I absolutely love him.
and Stoddard, hopefully, Stoddard and Ling, they could be very much like him, which is why you kind of look at Stoddard, Ling, Newman. Newman's turning 26 this year.
Yep.
Stoddard and Ling are only 18. And like that future there is really dangerous for Newman because I don't want to harp on about him, but for a player who's literally playing for his future, that's the only way you can look at it right now. He didn't even look like it mattered. Didn't even look like it was on his mind at the time. But like neither here or there. So
yeah, I think it's going to come down to retirements in the end. Who's decided that they're too beaten up to go on, and then they'll decide who they'll keep or who they'll trade or who they'll delist after that. Well, they'll do that every year, obviously. But I think Nick's going to be a watch this space until after the trade period.
Agreed. I think like if we go have a quick chat on that, I'll just give a couple of points and then we'll move on to the next bit of the review. McVeigh, I think he's touch and go for the end of this year. I think if the Swans make a grand final and we win, I think he might actually retire. Yep. But the way he's playing and his fitness, he could pretty much go on another year or two if his body keeps up. He could keep playing as long as his body's okay. And he is absolutely fantastic at the moment. He's probably top three or top four in the Bob Skilton medal at the moment.
I
that is how good he's been.
Absolutely agree with that. And I think he'd have to be. He's got to be in the conversation for All-Australian at the moment. They'll probably give it to Sicily because he's blonde and he plays for Hawthorn. But he'd have to be in the conversation for All-Australian. And I think the thing with Maher, is he could and probably will go on if he stays healthy. But he's one more calf injury away from calling it quits. I think he does agreed. One more calf or one more hamstring, and I think just going off last year's recovery, he'll be out for 3 months or 4 months or something. So if that happens in the back end of the season, if he goes out there next week and does a calf muscle, touch wood, I think he'll retire at the end of the year because I don't think he'll get back on the park before finals.
Yeah, I think Kieran Jack is also in the same boat. He's a few years younger, but his game has always been built on a power running game. And he's been a really good contributor when his disposal efficiency has been about 60 to 70%. But this season it's literally been less than 50%. And he's been hampered by injury the last couple of years. So I think he's also one big injury away from either getting the, I guess you could call it Ted Richards, Ryan O'Keefe treatment, just basically stuck in the NEAFL for the rest of the season until he retires, or he could just retire outright.
And you'd have to wonder too how much of that family stuff's still going on in the background as well. He looks like he's had a bit of the life sucked out of him.
Yeah, it does. But look, he is getting better, which is important. I thought he had a decentish game. He's certainly still getting the ball inside 50, which is what we need. Just needed to actually hit a target. That's a big difference. George Hewitt gave Patrick Cripps a bit of a bath. He didn't kill him in clearances, but Cripps really was... He's probably hampered by the corky from last week, but he had absolutely no influence on the match whatsoever in the first three quarters.
Yeah, that's true, which is what made, getting spanked in clearances in the third quarter so much worse because it wasn't Patrick Cripps who was doing it to us.
It was Ed Curnow just walking out.
It was Ed Curnow. I rate the Curnow brothers. I think they're going to be very good players for Carlton, but third quarter was interesting.
Yeah, it really was. Now, another player, obviously, we talked about McVeigh. He was really good in defence, but Smith as well. He was probably our best defender.
Do you reckon he'll get a vote?
Night when...
Pick up a Brownlow vote, a lazy one. Surely someone's read that in the newspaper and they'll give him a vote.
I don't think he will. I think if you're looking at coaches' votes, he's a chance. But Brownlow votes, there's got to be 3 Sinclair, 2 Parker, and 1 either Heaney or Florent.
Yeah, fair enough.
I thought Parker was pretty damn important for us in the second half. Yep. Without him, I don't think we even win by that much. I think we only keep it 1 or 2 goals.
He's smart, isn't he? He's a good goal kicker. One of the things that set him apart from a lot of our other guys last night was when he had that ball in the forward pocket, he actually centered it. And I don't think we did that any other time that night. We did these weird shots from strange angles that we're never going to get there. Gaz comes to mind. He tried this sort of, outside of the...
Franklin snap.
And we had 3 players open in the middle. Granted, most of them weren't looking at the ball carrier. He was looking and he fired that bullet across and Heaney grabbed it. And I thought, we need more of that as well. But I love Parker. Another one who wasn't a first round draft pick. Go Swans, find him.
Yeah. Yeah, he has. His career has been absolutely phenomenal, and I think he's just been a terrific player for the club. He's been absolutely fantastic. Another player I think is coming along leaps and bounds and definitely improving on last year is Will Hayward, and he had he kind of had a game where he's a bit in and out, but his role changes so much from game to game. He's either full forward, forward pocket, or he's literally playing wing or the forward flank. So it's crazy just how much he's actually playing different roles.
He's an absolute Swiss Army knife the last few weeks. He does a bit of everything, and he does most things well as well. I get a good laugh when people talk about the Tom Mitchell trade and how it worked out really badly for us. We actually got Hayward out of that trade.
Yes.
And Hayward's pretty good. So I don't think we lost as much as some people think we did. I rate him. I can't wait to see where he's at in, sort of 3 or 4 years' time, because I think he's going to be an outright star.
Yeah, he is. Now, I know this is kind of discussed in one of the questions later in the 3-minute scramble, but I just want to touch on Harry Marsh. Mm-hmm. Look, I thought his last 10 minutes last week and overall game was definitely an improvement on his previous 2 games. I look back and I look at his 2016 form. He was a really good one-on-one defender. That's all they wanted. They just wanted him to be a one-on-one defender, and he was good at it. He was efficient. He was beaten, but not often. So he was always drawing at least level.
Yep.
These days, he's been asked to play the Callum Mills role, and he's not great at it. His ball use is still pretty ordinary. But the one thing that he got good at in the NEAFL, and the one reason why he actually got senior games, was his man-on-man defence. Yep. And you go back to 2015, when he was interviewed after the NEAFL last season, and he said the one thing that the Swans wanted to do more was to be more aggressive with the ball. He's basically sacrificed all his defensive nous, and he's gone attacking defence, and now he's just atrocious at man-on-man defence. He is beaten by literally... You could probably put Caleb Daniel on him, and he'd still be beaten. His man-on-man defence is not AFL quality. He is now... I think he's a liability. I really like him. A couple of years ago, I thought he was a really promising player, and he could have been something like a really good, decent, depth player. But now he's kind of like, okay, I see why he didn't get to play for a few years for the Swans, because now he's kind of regressed. He's gone too much one way and just fallen off the edge on the other way.
I guess he's probably the player that's not the Swiss Army knife. He's either the hatchet or he's the filleting knife. He probably doesn't multi-role as well as others. I think the reason he's there, and I believe actually Horse said this in an interview recently, was that he's there basically because his form is better than Alir's. But I expect Alir's form will be better than Marsh's at some stage this year.
I think it's better this week. I reckon if you look at the players, the last 2 weeks side by side, NEAFL, AFL, Alir has been head and shoulders better than Marsh.
And I think they'll need to see that for a few more weeks yet before they bring Alir in. But certainly Marsh, I don't think he wouldn't be a first choice as a one-on-one replacement for Mills if you had another option. And I think we're really going to miss 2 things that Mills has taken away with his little foot injury. That's his intercept marking, which we know Alir can do. And his ability to hit short inside targets by foot coming off the half-back line. And we know Alir can do that as well. So
yes, absolutely. If we look back at 2016, Mills's and Alir's first season for both, they were both rated elite for intercept marks and intercept disposals. Elite in their first season. Alir had played like 8 games, and they were doing this on the Fox Footy telecast, and they were basically looking at Mills and Alir as like number 1 and number 3 ranked in the AFL for intercept marks and intercept possessions. Now, the thing that I think maybe people miss or don't see in the AFL is what Alir actually does with the ball. And he is, if he can get some time in the seniors, he would be pretty much like top 3, top 4 ball users. He plays a lot taller than he really is. Well, sorry, he probably, if he was shorter, roughly about the 185, 186, roughly Mills' height, he would be the perfect halfback flanker. Because he reads the ball absolutely fantastic. He can intercept it. He can do everything. Except he's just not a good tall defender, which is kind of like what he is. So he's a bit too tall for his own good.
Yep. Yeah. But I just hope they just say, this, let him work on his craft and not do, we're going to try as a forward this week. We're going to try as a ruck, or we're going to try as a high half forward or whatever that experimenting that went on, sort of early this year. Just let him work on what we know he's good at. He'll pay us back in spades. But I'm really
absolutely agree.
I really want to see him back.
Yep. Now, look, we'll give a quick NEAFL wrap and then we'll move on to the 3-minute scramble. So just a quick couple of notes out of that match was Sydney Uni were actually very close. They won most of the quarters in that match. It was just the Swans absolutely killed them in the third quarter, 7-5 to 0-1.
Big quarter.
It was a massive quarter. Now, Cameron, he has a lot of people have been calling for his inclusion. Got to keep in mind, he's only played against a couple of AFL quality ruckmen, and when he has, he's usually been beaten. And he's played against a couple of spuds, and he's usually done pretty well. But he is improving. I wouldn't say rapidly, but he's definitely improving. But him and Robinson really dominated in the middle quarters. Aliyah, he looked probably a little bit slightly off it early in the first quarter, but then built into the match, and all the feedback from the match has been he was absolutely superb when the match was up for grabs, and he was the best defender by an absolute mile. Maybaum is another one who's developing really good. He's basically a Reg Grundy replacement, just a drop-in replacement. He's probably a season or two away.
Yeah, I think Grundy's probably a season or two away out of retirement as well, so that might work out very well for us.
Yeah, they're going to transition him in at the right time, and he looks like a good 200-game player. Yeah. So, he's going to be a really good prospect for us. And Amadi and McCartan, they were very, very good. So, Amadi played pretty much full forward, and McCartan played almost wing forward flank.
I dropped a comment on one of the Facebook pages about Joel Amadi a couple of days ago, well, after that NEAFL game, actually. And I have no idea where he's come from. I don't know, was he a rookie draft or is he an academy player?
Yeah, rookie draft. He was actually roughly about pick 40 in the rookie draft.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, so that's Adam Goods territory.
Yeah.
Look, he looked in the forward line, he looked composed, he read the ball well, he guarded its drop. He's got a good set of mitts overhead for a kid. He just needed to be a little bit straighter in front of the sticks on a couple of occasions, but he looks like a really exciting prospect.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Now, look, that's going to move us into our 3-minute scramble. So I'm going to give you a couple of questions. You've got 3 minutes to answer them. So the first one was actually going to be on Maybaum, but we've actually just talked about him, so we'll skip that one. Now, Amy from Facebook, her question about Aliyah is, who comes out for him? Malika needs to come back. Josh?
Look, I think Marsh will come out for Aliyah. Well, we spoke about that a little bit earlier as well. Melican does need to come back at some stage, but I think Melican had a solid preseason, and now he's on his third hamstring injury. Is he? Is that right?
Yeah, he actually had 3 in 6 weeks. So
he did 2 on one and then 1 on the other, or something like that.
Yeah, the latest one's on the other leg, so he re-injured his original hamstring injury.
Yeah, so I think he's going to get back to the resis, and he's going to be there for a while. I think now, even if it's just to find match fitness, he didn't have a really good touch on the ball when he played seniors. Did he play seniors early this year?
Yeah, he did. He injured his leg. I think it was a GWS game with Sam Reid as well.
That's right, it was too. Almost in the same 3-second.
Yeah, in the same time. Both of them came off the field at the same time.
I don't think he was firing properly then. I think he's off to the resis to get some form back, and then we'll see. But certainly, Ali's going to replace Marsh at some stage. That's my opinion.
No, I agree. Anyone who's listened to the show would know I'm a big Aliyah fan, and I still go back to that Brisbane game last year, and I just shake my head at it. He should have come in and he should have stayed in the team, but that's my personal opinion. Now, Steve from Twitter, he asks, Rampy has to be towards the top of free kicks given away. I don't see most of them in slow motion. Is he the unluckiest player, or do you see most of his freezes correct? Now, Josh, I'll just quickly answer this, and I'll tag you in. So the first couple on Friday night, they were definitely there, especially the second one when he dragged Curnow to the ground. And then there was the other one when he wrapped his arms around Curnow, and it was a clear free kick.
Yep.
And he still argued with the umpire. It was pretty funny, the argument. But there's games when he's absolutely on it, like he was a couple weeks ago. And then there's games where he's way off the boil, like he was on Friday night. Josh?
Yeah, he was a little bit off the boil on Friday night. He reminded me a little bit about the final against Geelong last year. Had what he felt like were a couple of, stingy umpire calls went against him, and then he sort of lost his concentration a little bit. But Rampy's ramping. He's got the runs on the board to have a couple of funky games every now and then. So obviously not too worried about that.
Absolutely.
I think he gives away probably a few more free kicks than some of our other defenders, and I think that's because he's sort of a short to medium sized defender who can play tall. So I think he probably gives up them because he gives away a little bit of height at times. But I certainly don't think he's bad at giving away free kicks.
Yeah, agree. Now, last one is from, if I can even pronounce this one, Al Benjamino GP. I'm not quite sure if he's a doctor or a Grand Prix. Does McCartan... He could be a Grand Prix. I mean, he could literally be physically a Grand Prix.
How's about Ricardo the other night?
Oh, yes. Fantastic win. Could do a podcast on that one alone. Now, does McCartan have a future with the Swans next year? He's looking at a tall forward line of possibly Reid, Franklin, Blakey, and if we do trade for him, Darcy Moore. What do you think, Josh?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I don't put anything in the Darcy Moore thing at all at the moment, and I think if they get him, I don't think they'd take him as a forward, to be honest. I think they'd be looking more at him as a defender. I think that's come out of just some, talk about... I think that's come around just because his father's had a bit of a stoush in the media with Eddie Maguire last year about Nathan Buckley, and his father's good friends with either Andrew Ireland or Richard Collis, one of the two. I can't remember which one. Does McCartan have a place? Yeah, I think he does.
Yeah, definitely.
I think he does. I think Nick Blakey will get drafted. I don't think he'll come straight into the seniors team. Sam Reid, I love Sam Reid. He will get injured. He will not be there all the time. And Franklin, I'd love us to be in a position where we don't have to put Franklin inside forward 50. He's so much more dangerous from outside 50. And our half forwards and midfielders lose their mind when he's down there. They just lose all reason and kick it to him regardless. So I would prefer Franklin not to be inside forward 50 unless he's down there for a rest.
Yeah, look, for those that might not know, Nick Blakey, he's actually a bit of a utility. He's a 196 centimetre utility, kind of a little bit like Jordan Dawson, actually. He can play midfield, he can play outside, and he can play in the forward line. More recently in the academy, especially in the rep sides, and the Australian Football Academy that played the VFL North Melbourne team, he played pretty much as a full pocket full forward, and he was pretty good that game.
Just on the Darcy Moore thing again. His manager's Liam Pickering, and Liam Pickering's a pretty astute sort of, manager who manages to get money out of clubs. And I think part of this, I think he's just preying on Eddie Maguire's insecurities about, oh my goodness, we're going to lose Darcy Moore, the son of one of our greats, to the Sydney Swans. So I think it's about fleecing Eddie Maguire more than anything at the moment.
Oh. Yeah, 100%. It's all about putting him up in the shop window and seeing if anyone bites and then just boosting his value. Because let's face it, he really doesn't have that much value at the moment. He's played, I think, 30, 35, 40 games, and he hasn't really looked that good.
No, he's got a good name. He's got a couple of decent games under his belt. He had a couple last year. He kicked 5 or 6, I think, and won some praises. But he could be hampered too by Collingwood's ball moving into their forward 50s. He's almost as bad as ours at some stage. Well, probably worse than ours at most stages.
His career could almost mirror Sam Reid and Ben Reid. He could pretty much turn into the next injury-prone tall player, and we've already had enough of those. So, look, if we brought him in as a centre-half back, I wouldn't want the Swans to spend the farm to get him. Do it on a budget, do it sensibly, but we need the points to pick up Nick Blakey and any other academy prospect that the Swans are looking at. And there are a few, so we'll get some more information on that later in the year after the bye. We'll do a bit of an academy sort of wrap and let people know where things are at. But Josh, thank you so much for coming on the first Sunday show. So usually we do this on a Monday, but it's now on a Sunday, hopefully for the next couple of weeks until I jet off to America.
No worries. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Guys, as always, we are on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with the tag The Swans Blog, and also with the hashtags SwansCast for Sunday, Monday, and SwansCast Extra for our Thursday preview show. Until next time, go Swans.
Up the Bloods.